Good morning and welcome to today's session of Moments with Clara. This is a continuation of complicated grief, and we are zeroing in on the grief of child loss due to a child that has passed from this life because of a lingering illness. Our purpose is to talk about how this grief is different for parents and how we can expect to travel through this particular grief, a very hard, very complex, very complicated grief, and in the end, how we can regain some hope and some trust. We are going to break this down into 3 segments. Today is the first one of the 3 sessions on this type of grief. And we're going to talk about when parents hold on to hope clear to the bitter end, what happens? Now, this happened with my sister, as I mentioned before. She was diagnosed terminally ill due to asthma. And I really think that parents never ever expect their child to die before them. Never. If we're honest, we really don't. I know that in both cases of my losses, I never expected that I would have 2 sons to die before me. It's just, in a way, it's unreal yet, isn't it? To those of you who have lost a child before you, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. And when we're dealing with a child that has a lingering illness, and we've been told this child is terminal, I truly believe as parents we go into kind of this mode where we hear the words, but we don't really believe the words. And we have this innate hope that our child will beat the odds. And that's a good thing. That is not a bad thing. So I want to, make that remark right off the top. That is not a bad thing. Many others might look on and say, well, they're just holding on to false hope. Their prayers are futile. They are trying experimental drugs for their child. It's not going to work. But as parents, we want to try every last thing to keep our child here with us. And so we cling to this hope and we pray for this outcome to be different than what the doctors are telling us. And sometimes that does happen, as we mentioned before. But a lot of times our child will not beat the odds and our child passes. So what happens in the grieving process when you have stayed with your child, you've been by your child's side, you've watched your child suffer tremendously? What does this do to a parent, and how do they grieve differently? Well, for one thing, a parent may be consumed with anger for a long time. Angry at the doctors, angry at the situation itself. Why my child? Why this illness? Why so long? Why so much suffering? Why? And that's a good question. It truly is. We need to work through the whys before we can even take one step towards a semblance of healing. We will never know why. We truly won't. We really won't. We can do all the digging and researching and inner thinking that there is to do, but we'll never have a concrete hard answer as to why. Why did my child have to die in this way? Why did my child have to suffer? These are hard things, really, really hard things, and they mess with us. They mess with our minds and with our hearts, and they mess with our faith, and they mess with our trust. And these things mess with every part of our living, and rightly so. We have every right to question, every right to be angry, every right to be upset. As another part of this grieving process is we often reject God for a while. We lose our trust in our faith. Maybe we've prayed, maybe we've had hundreds, possibly thousands of people praying for our child's health to return, and it doesn't in the end. And a parent has to live with this thought of what went wrong. Where is my God? What happened to my faith? And then they realize I no longer trust in my foundation that I thought I was standing on. This is a very normal part of the grieving process. Also, we may be upset with our friends who were not by our side as we were watching our child gradually wane from this earth. It's a hard thing to think about. It's a hard thing to go through. It's terrifying. It's painful. It's heartbreaking to watch your child be ill and you are not able to take this illness from that child. This is probably one of the hardest things any parent will ever be called to do. And yet we know that it happens often. And we get upset with friends and family members who weren't there. We reject them, possibly for the rest of our lives. We don't have our proper thinking. I don't know of another way to say it. When we are in deep, complicated grief, it's hard for us to peel back the layers of grief and really see things a bit clearly. It may take years and years and years for this to happen. Yes, we're angry with God. Yes, we're upset with family and friends. Yes, we can't understand why our prayers weren't answered. Yes, we are upset with the medications that didn't work. All of those things add to this complicated grief journey. So where's the hope? What's the hope that I'm leaving you with? The hope is that in time, your grief will become more manageable. In time, you will grow to understand that every single one of us will go through a passing from this earth to our spiritual life. Every one of us. There's no escaping this. Sometimes young people are called to pass from this earthly life, what we term as too soon. I think as we grow older in our years and possibly grow a bit more in our understanding of life and death, that maybe we come to a point where we realize that each of us possibly has an appointed time to leave this earth, and that no matter what was done, if that was our time to leave, that's when we leave. And I think that I've come to that conclusion. I know both of my children left this earth far, far too soon, suddenly. In the blink of an eye, they were gone. And it's hard. It's hard to understand where God was in this process. It's hard to understand why two of my children were chosen. And yet, when I try to understand death and life and the fullness of it, it's really difficult. And I know that I will never have the full understanding of it, not on this earth, not in my earthly life. And so I've come to a point where I believe that we each have a time when we will leave this earth. And when it is our time, that's when we leave. And that has given me a bit of peace within my heart. There's no peace in knowing that your child suffered. There is no peace in that, except knowing that we live in a really sinful, horrible world, and very bad things do happen to very wonderful, kind, good, innocent people, and it's wrong, and that will never be righted, not on this earthly life. I hope that something has been said to you today that will encourage you to keep on keeping on. Know that you're not alone in this grieving. Know that many, many, many parents are walking the same path as you, and that in time, the precious gift of time will allow you to manage your grief a little better. You will remember more fully one day that your child lived and not that the only thing that your child died. Please hold on to that and stick with me. I know these are hard words, hard things we're talking about. We're going to follow through on this tomorrow and the following day. So stick with me for today. I just offer a prayer that your grief will be more calm, that you will have some kind of inner peace today, and that at least maybe one sentence out of everything that was spoken today has spoken to your heart, has touched your heart with some kind of encouragement. I want to sign off today with love, and I will see you tomorrow again with another Moment with Clara.